and welcome to the future. We're on full alert with an emergency special.
A look at how science and technology will respond to tomorrow's. We'll be keeping an eye on how it's doing.
Now, emergencies don't always have to threaten human lives. Take an environmental disaster like an oil spill from a supertanker. It can mean devastation to wildlife, both in the sea and on the beaches. Clearing up the damage is difficult and expensive, but the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency now think they've got an answer: the oil-busting sand scrubber. When the oil tanker Erika broke apart in November 1999, it was one of Europe's worst ever oil spill emergencies. Thousands of tons of oil poisoned large stretches of the French Atlantic coast. Despite millions of pounds being poured into finding fast clean-up solutions, when it comes to sandy beaches, there's still only one tried and tested method: using brute force to remove the contaminated sand. This is a painfully slow process, and the longer it takes, the higher the cost to the environment and wildlife. So to try and understand the lethal combination of oil and sand, we're going to cause our own mini-emergency here in Great Yarmouth. Tomorrow's World is an environmentally conscious programme, so we're not going to recreate a full-blown natural disaster for you. So instead we've got our own controllable beach, a sand pit full of sand, and this, for our purposes, is our leaky oil tanker full of crude oil. So here goes. So why is mixing oil with sand such an environmental nightmare? Sand has a much higher surface area than the equivalent of a shingle beach. Think of it like this: every single one of these particles is coated with a layer of sticky oil. Imagine getting that lot in your feathers. And on top of that, oil is incredibly toxic. But the Coast Guard has a new secret weapon, a sand scrubbing machine that's designed to separate oil from each grain of sand. At the heart of the machine is a jet pump. These high-pressure devices are used in many industries, from food transportation to diamond mining. And what they do is fire water at high pressure into the contaminated oil and sand mixture. Now that basically agitates the whole lot, so that sand effectively scrubs itself clean of oil. Because oil floats on water, it lifts to the top and trickles down into this tank for recycling. The sand is clean and is pumped away, and the clean water is then pumped back through the whole system to start the process all over again. This particular setup was originally used in quarries to separate clay from sand, but this oil-busting version has just been built. Today it's being trialled on sand that was contaminated over 20 years ago. It was off this very shore that the stricken Elaine V oil tanker was blown up, having spewed oil onto some of Britain's most popular holiday beaches. Back then, methods of disposing oily sand were primitive, to say the least.
Well, at the moment we're working with bulldozers and loading shovels, and we're carting it away at the moment. But we're also looking at the possibilities of digging large trenches and pushing the oil into the trench and then covering it up.
And some of those trenches were dug here at Caister-on-Sea, near Great Yarmouth. That stodgy mess there is the oil that came from the Elaine V. And that's 22 years old. Now what happened? To get rid of the problem then, the oil was scraped off the beach and buried in these pits. I guess that's kind of the environmental version of sweeping the problem under the carpet. Today the problem's been exposed after recent storms eroded the beach, revealing the polluted sand. The Coast Guard Agency now face a major challenge: to clean the sand before the tourist season starts. And they've set up camp next to the beach to give the new machine a trial run. So here we go. It's effectively a high-energy washing machine. Without the use of chemicals, the abrasive action of the sand separates the oil, allowing it to float to the top. The oily runoff collects in one of these holding tanks, but what we're all waiting for comes out here. After 20 years, has the sand been returned to its original pristine state? Darren Rumsey from the Environmental Agency puts it to the test. So, what do you think, Darren? Bearing in mind it is a genuine trial and this oil is 20 plus years old, how do you think it's done?
Today's been a real success. At the beginning of the trial, we had a solid, dark brown oil and sand mix. Now we've got nice, clean, soft sand, free from any oil, free from any oil odours.
So, the good news is that the Coast Guard won't have to bury polluted sand underground anymore. The sand scrubber also works out cheaper. With landfill taxes on the increase, if an oil spill emergency occurred off this coast today, the sand scrubber would clean the beach at half the cost. Now that brown sand looked kind of harmless, a bit like Demerara sugar, but it's only harmless until you realise what exactly came out of it. Just check this out. This is one thick, scummy crust of oil. Now that's ready to be removed and recycled. Because the oil comes out cleaner as well, it can be sold onto industry for reuse. So, in the event of a future oil spill, the Coast Guard will be better prepared than ever before. And Britain's sandy beaches and their wildlife will stand a better chance of coming out the other side unscathed.